What's up guys, my name's Ash and welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video guys, I've got some custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-2-4 formation, but just before we get started guys, as always, I'd very much appreciate it if you could drop this a thumbs up. It's time for shapeshifters, so if you guys need any coins, make sure you check out MMOXP.com. Their link is down in the description. They're fast, cheap and reliable, and if you use my code Rema, you can get yourself a very nice 5% discount. Alright then guys, so starting off with the custom tactics for the defensive style, I like to have this on balanced. Now the reason we have it on balanced is because it does give us the best control over our defenders. So when we need to press, we're able to press, and then when we want to drop off, be a little bit more passive, we are also able to do that. So balance gives us the control that the other settings will not give us. Moving on to the defensive width guys, I have this on 36. The reason I have it on 36 is because we want our defense to be nice and compact and narrow primarily, but the reason we don't have this any lower is because we still want to be able to cover the wider areas in case an opponent tries an attack down the wing. So we want to be nice and narrow so we don't leave any gaps in defense, but we don't want to be too narrow at the same time. You can switch around this number if you like. Moving on to the depth guys, I have this on 55. This is because it's a really nice balanced defensive line and depth in my opinion. When you have it on 55, your defensive line isn't always too deep to the point where you're always getting pinned back into your own box, and on the flip side it's not too high to the point where you're always getting through-balled and ripped to shreds by your opponent. So it is a really nice balanced defensive line where sometimes you win the ball back higher up the pitch and other times you sit a little bit deeper. Now moving on to build-up play guys, I have this on balanced. The reason I have it on balanced is because it's by far the most consistent and varied form of build-up. When you have this on balanced, you can decide when you want to play a bit slower and when you want to speed it up. For example, if you use fast build-up, you're always going to have to play quickly. You can't just randomly decide to slow it down. And on the flip side, if you use slow build-up, you always have to build up slowly. You can't just decide to play quicker. But with balance, you can pick and choose when and where you use each type of build-up. Now moving on to chance creation guys, I have this on direct passing. This is because direct passing is by far the most meta option in the game. When you use direct passing, your attacking players will bunch up against the opposition defenders, so you can do the super overpowered 1v1 isolation plays. Players will also make those extra movements into the penalty box so you can get off the extra pass to guarantee the goals. Direct passing is probably the most important tactic in my opinion. Moving on to the attacking width guys, I have this on 44. The reason I have it on around about this is because I don't want my attack to be like crazy wide, even though it is a wider formation, because it just feels like your team's way too far apart from each other. And on the flip side, we don't want to make it too narrow because then it feels more like a 4-2-2. So we kind of like to go for something like 44, as it's neither too narrow nor too wide. Moving on to players in box guys, I have this on 6. This is so we can get some players into the penalty area to create those chances, of course, but at the same time we don't overcommit the entire team to the point where we're always getting counter-attacked. As for the corners and free kicks guys, I have these both on 1 because there is a set piece routine that I use which requires these to be on 1. There is a link to that in the top right hand corner of the screen. Now moving on to the players you want to use guys, in the 2 striker positions, what I like to do is go for a balance between the 2 players. So what I like to do is go for a more creative player on the left hand side and then a more clinical finisher on the other side. The reason I like to do this is because it does really switch up your attack, makes it a lot more varied. For example, if you just use 2 out and out strikers in the striker positions, players that can only finish a ball really, you're going to be very limited in what you do in attack because you're always just going to have to resort to things like through balls and crosses because that's all the players are capable of. But if you implement a more creative striker into the lineup, then you can really switch up the play and do more varied build up in my opinion. So use whoever you want, but that's just my suggestion. Moving on to the 2 wingers guys, this is pretty self-explanatory, but you're going to want to use the best wingers you can. You're going to want to use players that are obviously very quick, have good dribbling ability so they can beat a man. It's also important that they have decent skill moves so you can beat an opponent that way as well, but it's also important that this player can pass and shoot because there are a lot of times where they will need to pass and there are also a lot of times where they will need to get into the box to finish off those chances. But yeah, moving on to the left centre mid, guys, I like to use a more defensive minded midfielder. This is somebody that's going to stay back and be as defensive as possible. They're not going to go forward on the attack, so I would suggest somebody with a medium high work rate if you can get it, as you get the maximum contribution in defence and they're not too bothered about going forward. As for the right centre mid, guys, I like to go for a more box to box style player. This is somebody that will attack and defend, so I would suggest somebody with a high work rate if you can get it, as you get that maximum contribution in both the attack and the defence, but just ensure that this player has a nice well-rounded card. As for the two fullbacks, guys, you can pretty much use whoever you want, but what I suggest doing is going for a bit of a balance between your two fullbacks, so you have like one more technical player in one of the positions and then a more defensive fullback that's maybe not as technical in the other position, but you can use two attacking fullbacks or two defensive fullbacks if that is something you want to do. As for the two centre backs, these just need to be the full meta players. These are obviously players that are very quick, have good physicality, decent animation choices. Players with a medium high work rate are often best as well, but there's not too much to say about them. As for the goalkeeper, it really doesn't matter. You can pretty much use whoever you want because they all pretty much do the same thing in this game. Now, moving on to the player instructions, guys, on the strikers, I like to have them both on stay central and mixed attack. The reason we have them on stay central is because we don't want them drifting off into the wider areas. They are our strikers, so it is important that they maintain those central positions. They're not too much use to us if they're drifting out wide all the time. We also have them on mixed attack as opposed to getting behind, as I feel like you get a lot more out of the strikers this way. When you put them on mixed attack, they make more dynamic and versatile movements that are pretty useful, whereas if you have them on getting behind, they're always making the same one-dimensional runs in behind and not doing too much other than making those same runs that can be very predictable. So I suggest mixed attack, but you can put them on getting behind if that's something you feel more comfortable with, or you could do a mixture where you put like the more creative player on mixed attack and the other one on getting behind. But yeah, moving on to the right winger and the left winger, guys, we have them on comeback on defense. This is so that the team will defend in a 4-4-2 shape. This is super important because the 4-4-2 will make us super solid defensively, which is obviously very important because it is good that we are good in attack, but we also want to be good in defense. So by putting the wingers on comeback on defense, they will come back to defend as a left mid and right mid, so it makes it more like a 4-4-2 when we don't have the ball, which will make us very good in the attack and the defense, which is what makes this formation really good. Moving on to the left centre mid, guys, I have him on stay back while attacking and cover centre. This is because he's our more defensive minded player, so we don't want him going forward all the time. We want to keep him on stay back. We also have him on cover centre, so he does defend those central areas. Moving on to the right centre mid, guys, the more box to box style player, we have him on the default settings and cover centre. So we have him on the default settings because he is a box to box player, so he has got a bit of a free role in the team. The only important thing is that we have him on cover centre, so he does defend those central areas. But yeah, I don't really like to restrict this player because he has a bit of a free role in the team. Now, moving on to the fullbacks, guys, the left back and the right back, I have them both on stay back while attacking and overlap. We have them on stay back while attacking, so we always have our back four intact, which will minimise the chance that we always get counter-attacked and through-balled. And we also have them on the overlap run type, so when we do send them on a run forward, they will make the overlapping runs to add extra width. When I want to send the fullbacks forward, what I'll often do is use the D-pad tactics to trigger attacking fullbacks and then turn it off when I want. So that way I can attack with them when I choose, but they will stay back when I want them to as well. As for the centre backs and the goalkeeper, guys, these are on the default settings and I do not touch them. But yeah, they are my custom tactics and player instructions for the 4-2-4. If you have enjoyed or found it useful, please be sure to drop this a like, sub to the channel if you are new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. And with all that aside, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.